In a bustling, high-end restaurant, a sudden outburst from a billionaire has the entire staff trembling. But it's not just any complaint. This one's personal, cruel, and targeted. Everyone stays silent, scared of the repercussions. All except one. A young black woman, new to the team, stands up against the storm. Her voice shakes the room, but will her courage cost her everything? In a world where silence has always been the norm, will one bold act of defiance change everything? Stay tuned to find out. Meet Maya. She's 23, freshly out of college, and trying to make a name for herself in the world of fine dining. After struggling to find a job that valued her skills, she finally landed a position at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. It's the opportunity she's been waiting for, a stepping stone to something bigger. Maya is eager, driven, and full of hope. She's learned quickly, balancing the pressure of the job with her ambition. The regulars all know her name now, but there's still a feeling in the air, an unspoken tension. The staff is divided. The old-timers eye her with suspicion, and there's always a hint of unease from the higher-ups, especially when she's the only black woman in the room. But Maya brushes it off. She tells herself she's just lucky to be here. That is, until the night everything changes. The billionaire walks in, his presence commanding, his reputation well known. What happens next will test everything Maya thought she knew about herself, and the world she's worked so hard to fit into. The evening started like any other. The restaurant buzzed with energy, the clink of fine china filling the air. Maya moved swiftly between tables, a slight but confident smile on her face as she served the guests. She had learned to keep her head down, smile through the pressure, and stay invisible to the ones who mattered. But tonight, something felt off. When the billionaire, Jonathan Hayes, arrived, the mood shifted. His reputation preceded him, a man known not just for his wealth, but for his demanding nature. The staff tensed. Maya had seen him before, but never this close. She felt a cold knot form in her stomach as he entered the restaurant. His eyes, scanning the room, locking onto her for a brief second before turning away. The tension was palpable, but Maya pushed it aside. She was used to feeling watched. What she wasn't used to, though, was the way Hayes treated her, dismissively, as though she wasn't even standing in front of him. He didn't ask for the menu. He didn't even look at her face. His gaze only grazed the floor, sizing her up with an arrogance that made her skin crawl. At first, Maya thought it was just his usual cold demeanor. But then, as the night wore on, she felt it, the subtle insults, the comments no one else heard. She brought his drink over, a simple glass of water, but before she could even set it down, he sneered, "About time someone brought it. I almost thought I was invisible in here." Maya froze, a tight smile playing on her lips as she tried to keep her composure. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again," she replied, her voice tight but controlled. But the tension didn't stop. As the night dragged on, Hayes's behavior grew more erratic. He began loudly complaining about the food, blaming Maya for things out of her control. Every time she approached the table, he would dismiss her with an insulting comment or a sneer. His voice carried through the restaurant, his words cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "This place is a joke. Who hired you, huh? Get someone who actually knows what they're doing." Maya's heart raced. Every glance from him felt like a slap. She was used to dismissals, to being overlooked, but this was different. This was personal. And then it happened. She returned to the table with the main course, her hands steady, despite the storm raging in her chest. As she set the plate down, Hayes leaned in, his voice low and full of disdain. "You really think you're cut out for this job, don't you? A girl like you? In a place like this?" The words hit like a punch, the weight of them sinking deep into her chest. She stood there, frozen, her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the eyes of the other staff on her, the silence suffocating. Maya was about to turn away, to bite back the tears, to pretend it hadn't cut her so deeply, when a woman at the next table, an older guest who had been quietly observing, stood up. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, and Maya could feel the tension shift. The woman's eyes were sharp, but her voice, when she spoke, was gentle. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone firm but controlled. "I've been watching you all night, Mr. Hayes, and I don't think you understand the power you hold in this room. You don't get to treat people this way." The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The woman's words landed like a shockwave, her bravery lighting a spark in Maya that she hadn't known existed. But before Maya could even process what was happening, Hayes turned to the woman with a look of fury. "Who the hell are you to tell me how to behave? This is my restaurant!" The woman stood her ground, unflinching. "It's not your restaurant, not anymore. You've lost your right to be here." Maya's heart was pounding. Could it be? Could someone actually be standing up to him? The scene was building. The stakes were rising, but Maya's eyes flickered back to Hayes. He wasn't done. Not yet. The room went dead silent. Maya's heart hammered in her chest, her body frozen in place as she watched the confrontation unfold. Hayes was standing, now his face red with anger, his fists clenched at his sides, shaking slightly with barely contained fury. He stepped toward the woman who had dared challenge him, the smoldering hatred in his eyes as he spat. "You think you can talk to me like that? You're nothing! You're a nobody!" The woman didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice unwavering. "You're the nobody. Not here. Not anymore." But Maya wasn't listening to the words anymore. She wasn't focused on the woman who had tried to stand up for her. Her gaze was locked on Hayes, on the man who had made her feel less than human with every insult, every glance. In that moment, something inside her snapped. All the years of biting her tongue, of swallowing her hurt and shame, exploded in a surge of anger she couldn't contain. She took a step forward, her voice trembling but strong. "Enough," Maya said, her words cutting through the thick tension. "Enough of you treating people like this. You don't get to make me feel small anymore." Hayes whipped around to face her, his eyes widening in disbelief. For the first time that night, Maya saw a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. He was used to people cowering. He was used to people falling in line, afraid of him. But Maya wasn't afraid, not anymore. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, his voice a growl. "You think you're better than me?" Maya took a deep breath, her chest rising with every word. "I don't think I'm better than you, but I'm better than this. I'm better than your hate." She stepped closer, the crowd of onlookers around them holding their breath. Every second felt like an eternity. The energy in the room shifted, from suffocating fear to something else, something more powerful. Maya had just claimed her voice, and it was the loudest thing in the room. And then, without warning, Hayes raised his hand as if to strike her. The world seemed to stop for a moment, time suspended, before the sharp sound of his hand cracking through the air echoed across the room. But it wasn't. Maya he was reaching for, the woman who had stood up to him, the one who had challenged him, was now standing in front of Maya, her hand raised, palm out. "You want to hit someone? Hit me," Maya gasped. But before she could react, Hayes's fury boiled over into something far darker. In the tense silence that followed, something inside the room shifted. The moment Hayes raised his hand, the woman stepped in front of Maya, her stance unyielding. It wasn't just an act of protection. It was an act of defiance. Hayes hesitated, his rage palpable, but for the first time he wasn't in control. The crowd watched, holding its collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And then, something unexpected occurred. A ripple of support spread through the room. The staff, those who had stayed silent for so long, began to speak up. One by one, they shared their stories, their frustrations, their pain. The atmosphere shifted from one of fear to unity. The waiter who had always kept his head down, the hostess who had smiled through the discomfort. They all stood with Maya now. Hayes, realizing that his power had crumbled, turned on his heel and stormed out, his arrogance shattered. He was no longer the towering figure of influence he once was. The room exhaled in unison, as if the weight of the injustice had been lifted. For Maya, the aftermath was both freeing and terrifying. She had never imagined she would stand up for herself like that, let alone in front of a crowd. But in that moment, something inside her changed. She realized that racism didn't have to go unchecked. Her voice mattered. She mattered. As she stood there, the words of the woman who had protected her echoed in her mind. "You are better than this." Maya knew that from that day on, she would never let anyone, no matter how powerful, make her feel less than. But the story doesn't end here. How many others have been silenced in the same way, their voices drowned by fear? How many have suffered in silence, just like Maya, waiting for someone to stand up for them? The truth is, the fight against racism doesn't stop with one moment. It's a call to action for all of us. If we can't change it for ourselves, we change it for those who come after us. Are you ready to speak up? Are you ready to be the change? Because as Maya learned that night, when we stand together, we can